back to Twist of Fate, a small business podcast where you can find your inspiration to make your entrepreneurial dreams come true. Today's episode is dedicated to those that make the impossible happen. We're talking to a Black female that is an emergency physician, a Black female founder, a Black female fundraiser, a mom that is making a difference by bringing a new standard of care to resolve an age-old problem, that being nosebleeds. Dr. Elizabeth Clayborne, welcome to Twist of Fate.
Hi, Doug. I'm thrilled to be here.
And welcome to sunny California. Today we're filming at the Younger Family Residence, and I'm really glad that you were able to make it out here. It's a lot warmer out here than where you're from.
Yes, this is like what we call nosebleed season. So we have all that cold, dry air on the East Coast. And it's chilly here as well, I noticed, but a little bit better. Yeah,
it's dry here. So I want to start, first of all, that one, I want to thank you for your service as a medical practitioner and frontline worker. Like you save lives every day, right?
Yeah, my day job, as I said, or I should say my old day job, is being an emergency physician. And I still practice clinically because I think it's important for me to really understand what's going on the ground. And it's one of the things that I really value in my career because it keeps me humble and it keeps me connected to the everyday problems of people, no matter what their walk of life is. When I walk into the ER, I never know what I'm going to get. And I like that thrill and that excitement. And I love the opportunity to really truly serve, my fellow human beings in that way.
Okay, amen to that, right? Like a Twist of Fate audience, like we need our doctors. Also, I want to acknowledge you because it's kind of special. Like, first of all, you are a minority woman, founder, and physician. Like, look, you're beating the odds. First of all, you've beaten the odds already. Like, this is better than I could do. So, really, if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about like your journey to becoming a physician and all the trials and tribulations? I'm married to one, so I have context, but my audience may not.
Yeah, I love that your wife's a fellow EM doc. We're a special breed of docs, too. You'll see every physician kind of has their personality that's a part of their specialty. And I love being an ER doc. So, my story is interesting. I would say that I had a very atypical approach to a career in medicine. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. My mom is a nurse. My dad was an engineer. And so I had early exposure to healthcare. But if anything, I would say my mom almost was trying to deter me from going into healthcare because she saw early on the hot mess that is, healthcare in the United States. And so she would always kind of bring me into clinics or introduce me to physicians. And I think that I just always really liked the opportunity to kind of be there and witness, life-saving interventions. And so I think even early on, I knew something like emergency medicine was going to be interesting, but I had a lot of other interests. I did a lot of creative writing, I had kind of an artistic touch. If anything, I'd actually say I'm almost more right brain than left brain, whereas you think a lot of, STEM and science, medicine people are left brain. To be a true physician and good at that art, you have to understand people and have an emotional intelligence. And I think that kind of was bred in very early in my kind of upbringing and education. I went to school for college at Duke University, and I think that's the first place where I decided to do
Great
something.
School.
Awesome school.
Big shout out to the Duke alumni, right?
Absolutely. Go Blue Devils. I love it. I mean, I love my Duke alumni network. I had an absolutely fantastic time in undergrad, and it was definitely a place that was formative for me and kind of helping me to decipher where my passion lies and what kind of physician I was going to be in the future. So
you weren't an undeclared undergrad. Like you already knew, like, pre-med, I'm going to be a doctor.
Yes and no. So I knew I was pre-med, but I came in gung-ho about BME, biomedical engineering. Gotcha. And then ultimately was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not taking like math courses as my electives. Like, it's not going to happen. And I randomly had taken some philosophy and religion courses and really liked them. So I did a special major called Program 2 at Duke where I designed my own major, and mine was medical ethics and religion.
Oh, wow.
So I did all my pre-med, prerequisite courses, but then I also did all these very fascinating courses that came from the social sciences and philosophy and religion, which I I think really helped to inform me in always approaching a patient as a human being and not necessarily just a disease entity. And then I kind of added to that after after undergrad, I went to do a 2-year research fellowship at the National Human Genome Research Institute, but I looked at race, ethnicity, and genetics. So once again, not necessarily bench science, but more of like the kind of construct of race and how that intersects with genetics and how people identify themselves. It was at the time that Bidil, which was the first race-based therapeutic, was released and very controversial at the time. As someone who's biracial, black and white myself, what do we do with that? I mean, nowadays there's all types of children that have all types of backgrounds. And so, what do we do with something like race that does kind of in many ways may account for some potential, factors in their health, but is kind of fluid in the way that we define it as human beings. So that was like another layer that was atypical in my journey to medicine. And then when I finally went to med school, I went to Case Western Reserve.
Hey.
Cleveland.
Big shout out to Cleveland. Big shout out to my alumni, Case Western. We got one through, guys. We got one through.
Absolutely. Outstanding medical school. I had an outstanding experience there, and I also did a dual degree program. And one of the reasons I selected Case for med school is I was able to complete both my MD and get an MA in bioethics, kind of bringing full circle my whole interest in kind of policy, ethics, and really kind of honing in on what my medical career would look like. And I think that, at Case, I definitely solidified that emergency medicine was my thing, and that's what I was going to go into. But I also kind of knew that I always was going to have this atypical career and what I would call a multifaceted career where I wasn't just going to be a clinical workhorse, right? I was interested in impacting the overall healthcare system, and also just kind of keeping my eyes and ears open for other opportunities. I was always willing to kind of take those risks. So I went on to train at GW, George Washington University.
Great school again.
I know. I do like my pedigree. I like it.
Yeah.
And so GW is where I did residency in emergency medicine, a 4-year program there, and I was chief resident in my 4th year. And it was there that I first kind of came up with the idea for NasaClip. And really that came from the experience of seeing tons of people come to the ER for nosebleeds.
I was going to ask that. I think my audience may underappreciate how many nosebleeds you see in a day, right?
So we see 500,000 ER visits annually in the U.S. for nosebleeds, and that's just in mostly hospital-based ERs, not even urgent care. So it's about 1 in every 200 visits is a nosebleed visit. And I couldn't believe that people came to the ER for nosebleeds because it seemed like a pretty simple issue, like just hold pressure. But people tend to mismanage nosebleeds. There's a lot of misinformation about what to do. So a lot of people with their head backward, you're supposed to be forward. They hold up here on their nasal bridge when really you need a pinch over the soft part of your nose. And then most importantly, you have to hold constant uninterrupted pressure for 10 to 20 minutes, which sounds simple, but it's actually really hard to do that. Everyone lets go after about 30 seconds. And nosebleeds are actually most common in kids age 2 to 10, and then older adults 55 to 80, especially if they're on blood thinners. So if you think about it, that's the least likely population to be able to hold constant pressure for 20 minutes. So I think people muck up the nosebleed, they make it worse, and then they might be panicked because they're bleeding, which is understandable, and they don't know what to do, so they come to the ER. But for me as an ER doc, I'm dealing with gunshot wounds and heart attacks and strokes, and so often these kind of patients have to wait. And we didn't have anything to give them while they waited. We would be taping together tongue depressors or having someone go up and try to hold pressure for them. And that's where I was like, look, there has to be something that's a better solution for helping people to manage nosebleeds effectively. And so that's how the idea for NasaClip was born.
If they have different causes, there's not different treatment models? It's just like you said, you just have to pinch it or...
Yeah, the most common cause of nosebleeds is dry air, which is why it's seasonal. So in the winter time when the air is more dry and people are going inside into heated indoor spaces, basically because the area that you bleed from inside your nose is known as Kesselbeck's plexus. It's this collection of blood vessels really close to the mucosal surface. So when it dries out, it cracks, and that's how you bleed. And that's why dry air is the most common thing. Nose picking for kids is common. Allergies, colds, like anything that causes irritation irritation of the nose, and then of course trauma, right? If you're getting hit in the face. So for the vast majority of nosebleeds, yes, the treatment is the same. There are two different kinds of nosebleeds, anterior and posterior. Posterior nosebleeds come from an arterial source at the back of the nose, but that's pumping, profuse, blood might be coming out of your mouth, your nose. If you pinch it, you would not really be able to stop it. That's considered a medical emergency and immediately go to the ER. And I would, very, very rare though. Over 90% of nosebleeds are anterior nosebleeds, which are the simple kind that can be treated if you will hold appropriate pressure. And that is what I designed NasaClip for, to be the Band-Aid of nosebleeds and allow people to have simple, but easy to use nasal compression with sponges that go inside the nose that are comfortable, and both sized for adults as well as kids.
Twist of Fate will be right back. Hey, Twist of Fate listeners. Did you know you can book me, Doug Younger, DY3, to speak at your next event, deliver a keynote, or commencement speech? I'll bring all that Twist of Fate energy, as well as my experiences as the founder and CEO of 3 Steps Forward, a marketing company. The accolades that come with being a university adjunct professor, and lessons from my corporate career in Fortune 500 businesses traveling to over 40 countries worldwide. You can also book coaching and workshop sessions for you and your team. Book me using the link below in the description for this episode. Hey, you never know. You may find your own inspiration leading to a twist of fate. How did that happen? Did you develop a prototype?
People ask this all the time because they're like, how did you become a physician entrepreneur? I mean, this was not part of the plan, okay? But as I mentioned, when I gave you kind of my background, I'm definitely someone who looks for opportunities in unlikely places. And when I saw this problem with nosebleeds, I was like, there has to be a better way to treat this. If you ask any kind of emergency physician, they're gonna roll their eyes and kind of groan when you bring up nosebleeds, because it's a cumbersome issue for us to deal with. And even though it's usually a simple problem, it tends to take a lot of time and resources to solve. So initially I had an idea in my head of what I thought this device could look like, how it could work, and what I wanted to do. But taking that idea to fruition had a lot of steps. And I think this is where a lot of people who do have ideas, because especially in emergency medicine, we're on the ground level for all types of healthcare issues. A lot of people have good ideas, but then what do you do when you have an idea? What are the steps you take? I think that's why I've been really trying to share my story more and more so that people can see and learn from the journey that I had. So for me, the first thing I did at GW is I had a mentor there who was a co-founder, Dr. Neil Sicca, and he mentioned that we had a GW business plan competition that I could, apply for. So I did that, and it forced me to kind of think more about the business side of what I would do to create a business plan and bring this kind of product to market. And we did really well in the business plan competition. We went into the finals, and it was kind of the first time that I was like, okay, let me look into this a little bit more. I think it really has some teeth. And from there I did
Let me say this. I love that a non-business person entered a business pitch competition.
Yes.
And breaking the fourth wall, talking to my audience here. If you want to be an entrepreneur, I think this lesson from Liz is key. Take your idea, pressure test it first. Don't take out all the loans. Don't borrow all the money. First, pressure test it. Pitch competitions are at many universities. They're ongoing all the time. You learn a lot from even watching other entrepreneurs pitch, and then your pitch gets better. So
absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Doug. And so the second step I did really actually did exactly what you're talking about. So I did the NSF I-Corps program.
National Science Foundation.
Yes, National Science Foundation. And so this is a program that's really designed to do exactly what you're talking about. Before you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into this idea that you think is fabulous, you need to make sure that it has real customers that will pay money for what you think is a good idea. So they do a lot of focus on customer discovery. So I did first the kind of local I-Corps, and then I did the national I-Corps, which comes with some grant money. And with that, we were able to go out and actually interview pharmacists, coaches, school nurses, parents, fellow physicians and ask them, like, is this a problem with nosebleeds? What do you currently do about it? And, would you be interested in something that treats the nosebleed in the way that I had talked about? And that's where we got a lot of validation for the size of the market that NasaClip would serve. And then also what the interest would be, for our different channels and consumers that we would be targeting. And that was an essential step, because then I was able to make sure that, once I got NasaClip to market, we were going to be able to sell it. So that was the first thing I did. And then from there,
So user research, again, breaking the fourth wall, Dr. Clayborne's teaching us a lot of stuff here. Before you go into taking the money, you also want to invest funds into market research. This is really great that she mentioned the National Science Foundation, but there are all types of other associations that give grants for you to do more customer discovery, which again, a non-business person behaving very much like a pro-business person, kudos to you. So.
Thanks. It's funny because I think physicians notoriously have a terrible reputation for not being great founders. And I think it's really because our mindset and the way we think clinically is very different from how you have to think business wise. But I think I learned to kind of thread that needle really early on and be able to flip back and forth between what I would do as a doc versus what I would do as a founder. I will back up and add one other very key thing you have to do early on when you have an idea is protect your IP. So when I first entered the business plan competition, one of the things I made sure I did before I publicly talked about the idea was submit my provisional patent. And that was really yes, absolutely. And that was really essential because then that actually started the process of getting a full patent issued. And that's why we currently are patent issued with multiple design and utility patents. And if you don't have IP when it comes time to actually raising money and having value for your company, you'll have nothing. So you want to make sure that
also you go in the pitch competition, everybody's watching, right? Like
exactly.
It's a great idea and they could rip it off, right?
Yeah, got to make sure that you're protecting that early on. So those are the two key things: is validating that you have an actual consumer that's going to pay for your product, and protecting that idea. And so then I would say that actually there was a little bit of a lull in the development of NasaClip because life happens. Like at this time, I had an idea. I was in my 4th year of residency, and then I joined faculty with the University of Maryland, where I still practice. I got married. I had 2 kids. I was doing academic work with my policy stuff. I had a lot of interest in health policy, specifically looking at ethics issues like death and dying. So I was a busy young mom, doc, academic, physician, and doing all that. And, when you have a business that's really new, you have to have capital. And at the time I didn't have that. And it occurred to me that this
nothing happens unless you have work.
Nope. Gotta have it. But you're not going to get capital unless you actually kind of pull up your sleeves and decide like you're going to jump in and really focus on that.
In fact, many of the VCs or angels that when they invest in something, one of their prerequisites is that you need to go work this. Like you're going to leave your job, or that's usually some of the feedback they give.
Yeah, I have an interesting perspective on that because I do think early on, a lot of, VCs and people who are giving you money expect you to be full time. But I have pushed back on that idea substantially because as a Black female, I will tell you that is something easy to do if you're a trust fund baby and you don't have a mortgage and kids and student loans. For the vast majority of founders, they have to keep working while they're building their business because they do not have a way to feed themselves. And you want to be able to feed yourself. So I will share a story that it relates to that.
I'll also say though, Liz, like you're actually the primary user of this product too. So that gives you insights into development and what you need to do. So I agree. In your sense.
Yeah, and in mine it made even more sense because being a practicing physician meant that I could talk to other physicians, and especially in emergency medicine, if you don't actually practice medicine, most docs are going to be like, you don't know what you're talking about, because it's a dynamic area of medicine, and if you don't have your ear to the streets and you're not down there in the trenches actually practicing, it's hard for people to believe that you're presenting a solution that's really going to work in their system. So for many reasons, it was always helpful for me to keep working. But in the beginning, it was also because I had to be able to feed myself and my family. So I think that the focus on the business and the shift away from being a primarily practicing physician to a primary founder and CEO of NasaClip actually happened in 2020, right after the pandemic. And, I share this story because 2020, was a volatile year for a lot of people, right? With COVID.
Yeah.
For me in particular, it was just an unbelievable year because I was about 6 months pregnant when COVID hit with my second child.
Scary time.
Oh yeah. And this is like
no vaccine in sight then.
Oh,
right?
You got to think back. This is when we didn't have enough PPE.
Right.
Testing would take 10 days. And then I worked at PG County Hospital, which was maybe one of the hardest hit hospitals in the state of Maryland. I mean, we had more COVID volume than several other hospitals combined. It was a very, very tenuous, challenging time. There were 2 other physician colleagues of mine that were also pregnant. So 3 pregnant docs in this one hospital. So if we had all just left, it would have been a big deal. And we would not have been able to serve our patient community. So at that time, I pushed through and worked through the first wave. And during the kind of initial wave of COVID, that's when I started to do quite a bit of media. I had an initial local interview about what was it like to be a frontline ER doctor in the pandemic pregnant. And then that kind of led to a whole bunch of other national media opportunities with CNN, Yahoo Finance,
unrelated
MSNBC.
To NasaClip.
Absolutely.
It was just related to the COVID.
Yes. Yeah. But what it did is it really honed my speaking ability, which is so key for you to be able to be an effective founder, especially with fundraising. And so I think that was fortuitous for me to have had this kind of happenstance opportunity to really be in the national spotlight as a physician. And then also it was important to me because at the time I didn't see that many other Black female physicians on TV. And I served a largely Black patient population. So I thought it was really important at the time to be that articulate, well-educated Black female physician that could really speak to people who had a lot of mistrust or just, anxiety about what was going on. Everyone did. And so it was nice to be that voice for them to kind of think about what they should do in the circumstance. Fortunately, in May of 2020, I delivered my healthy baby girl with no complications. And then I was on my maternity leave. And it was during the maternity leave that I did my first accelerator program. So this is where I started focusing more on the business. And part of the reason I did it during my maternity leave, because, you're not that busy, with a newborn or anything, is that they required full-time participation. And the only time I could be full-time was during my maternity leave. And so I took advantage of that 12 weeks to do this program. And it came with some capital. And it was called the Builder Fund. And it was sponsored through TEDCO, which is a Maryland state-based organization that has been really by my side from the very beginning. And to their credit, I explained to them that, it was a challenge for me to find time where I could dedicate, full-time status. And they've since kind of adjusted some of their programs to understand that early founders, especially female founders, are going to need programs that can work with them and understand that they might also be working at the same time that they're building their business. So that was, I think, important feedback because a lot of venture capital and other organizations talk about wanting to support minorities or wanting to support women who are founders. And I have explained that there are several hurdles that, kind of prohibit people from taking those essential first steps with engaging in accelerator programs or getting capital. And one of them is that you can't be full-time if you're not really getting paid because your company is maybe not at a point where it's generating revenue or able to support you. It doesn't mean that you're not putting in full-time effort. Like I was basically just working, 2 full-time jobs.
Twist of Fate will be right back. Want to be part of our growing community of entrepreneurs and business owners? Join our Patreon and gain access to all of our content, including exclusive videos, Twist of Fate merchandise, and bonus educational content. You can also advertise right on Twist of Fate by joining our ad partner program. Don't have an ad to run yet? That's okay. We can help you by producing a Twist of Fate perfect ad like this one. Check out the show notes and learn how to apply to become an ad partner. And of course, we always appreciate when you like, subscribe, and share. Now let's get back to Twist of Fate. I'd like to hone in a little bit on this accelerator experience for you. So, to my listeners, accelerators are programs that you'll have to apply. If you get accepted, you're in a cohort group. there's other founders there, and then you kind of do different boot camps and drills to hone your business plan. And then obviously they may give you some capital later on. How was your experience at the accelerator you went?
So the first accelerator I did was fantastic. And part of the reason that it was really important for me to have that as a first accelerator is it came with a lot of what they called executive management support. So I had advisors that they compensated, right? So they paid for them, who came in and really worked with us on a weekly basis on our current milestones. What are the next steps we're taking? And actually one of the advisors from that program is still an advisor in my company. So I made important contacts, in that program. And every accelerator has a different flavor as far as what they kind of want to teach you. I've done several since then. Tidco Builder Fund was the first one. I've done a Springboard Accelerator, which focuses on female founders, which was also outstanding. I had an advisor that was assigned to me in that accelerator who's also now with my company and stayed on past that time. And I think that what you have to take away from it is a couple of things. They'll give you content, like a curriculum usually, which is valuable, but most importantly, they give you network and connections. So not just the connections from the advisors, but your fellow founders.
Sure.
So the National Science Foundation, SBIR, which is Small Business Innovation Research, Phase 1 grant, I was applying for that at the time. And there were several other members of my cohort in these accelerators who were also applying for grants. So we really share, resources, experience, connections, and then you also get a lot of that emotional support, which I think is what is really essential, especially when you're an entrepreneur, because it can be a really lonely job, right? You're the boss. You don't have anyone else that's doing exactly what you're doing. You don't have anyone necessarily to vent to. And so I think that these programs provide all of those resources, but then they also provide that community that really want to cheer you on and lift you up. And that's an important.
Still stay in touch with
Oh, absolutely. I have group chats with several of them. And so we always cheer each other on. And I think that an important aspect of this that's been really interesting to me as a female professional is sometimes you can get a little bit of tension between women who are trying to climb professionally. I've seen that a little bit in medicine, but I've noticed that in the startup space, all of us female founders just want each other to win.
Sure.
And it really comes from a genuine space of I see you, sis. I am here to root for you, and I genuinely want you to win.
You're right. What I see, female entrepreneurs are a rare breed. It's almost like the system's set up against you to some extent because the VCs don't even give money proportionally in a fair way to female entrepreneurs. So I'm really glad to hear that your experience is that female entrepreneurs get together and support each other. They have to. It's the only way we're all going to win. And for me, I know this, if we're going to create creative destruction and truly get new insights and create innovations, it takes unique perspectives. So I think a lot of women in business, women in medicine, in your case, you literally are seeing an unmet need that needs to be addressed. And I think it's special that you do that. So, to my female entrepreneurs, we love you. Keep going.
And I think it's important to point out, Doug, exactly how stark those kind of discrepancies in funding are. So currently, we still only have about 2% of venture capital, 2% going to women.
It's abysmal.
For Black women, it's 0.34%. So what does 0.34 round to? 0%. There's basically no support. And so it's an uphill battle. The other way that I've illustrated this in the past that really resonates with people to help them understand how challenging it can be to raise money as a woman of color is that on average, a white male founder needs to speak to about 7 contacts to get a yes or a commitment for investment. A Black female founder needs to speak to 10 times that amount, 70. 70 people to get one yes. Now, fortunate for me, I don't think I had to kind of do that much work, but I've heard a lot of no's.
It certainly helps that your perseverance over time, you mentioned about taking a break, I think that was probably a good thing. Because a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with, that fatigue, they get burnout. So, and there's no question, but I really think that it's good that you numerically brought out that, 2% of venture investment goes to women. So I think, my comment to a lot of my listeners, if you're a woman in business, accelerators is a way that you can not be alone on that front, but then also start looking at non-traditional forms of fundraising like crowdfunding and other things so you can get some funds going and improve your concept. You didn't have to do that, but I think it's a viable option these days.
Absolutely. And so is angel investing. I was heavily supported by angel investors early on in my round. So initially I did 2 different convertible notes of $550,000 each. So my first $1 million in fundraising came from, convertible notes that had a lot of small angel investors. And for
other physicians,
of course. In some regards, a lot of people, they do crowdfunding because, they don't necessarily have a network of people who can be accredited investors, which is what required to be an angel investor. But for me, I at least had a physician network that I think believed in me, and they were able to write those small checks. But a lot of them were not aware of angel investing, and especially in the Black community,
Sure.
I don't think there's enough, people who know that this is a way for you to invest your money outside of real estate or your 401k that is risky, right? It is high risk to do kind of angel investments in startups.
Yeah, but the risk reward is in thousands of multiples.
A high risk, high reward, but it also can support something you believe in. So if you believe in someone like me, who's a Black female physician founder, you like the NasaClip idea because you see the potential of it as the Band-Aid of nosebleeds, it helps you to kind of kill 2 birds with one stone, like do something that is building up your community or whatever your cause is, at the same time investing your money. So I think that I brought a lot of awareness to the opportunity for angels. And I'm really proud to say that even currently, because now I've raised a total of $3.25 million for this company, and about 80% of my cap table is Black. And so it means a lot to me that I'm being supported by my community.
Amen to that. I'd say, now, given that you're fundraising currently, like, what's your long-term objective on this round? Like, because this is pre-seed, not necessarily Series A.
This is seed. So pre-seed was the convertible notes. We're now in the middle of a $4 million seed raise.
Almost there.
Yeah, close, over half of it. So, 2023 was a tough year with, SVP, and just in general, it was a difficult year for anyone to raise money. So especially, as I mentioned, with the statistics stacked up against me as a Black female founder, it was extraordinarily difficult. So I was really proud that I was able to close $2.25 million of my $4 million raise last year.
Last year, 2023, first of all, it was hard for everybody across the board, right? Ukraine war, inflation increase, interest rate increase. But what affected the startup ecosystems a lot was the failure of SVB Bank and First Republic, both lending institutions that were big in startups. And it wasn't just for the companies that were with them or had FDIC insured accounts. It's just across the board. Investment in startups slowed down. And for you to have raised $2.2 million, incredible. You're beating the odds. Like, I also know one thing about entrepreneurs: they don't pat themselves on the back. So that's why I'm doing that for you, literally. Like,
thank you.
Fist bump on that.
Appreciate you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, more specifically, NasaClip and how it works. Sure. So I believe you brought some samples that we could take a look at?
I did.
Yeah, so why don't we transition into showing the audience how it works?
Okay. So this is the NasaClip device. It comes in packages both for adult, which are for ages 14 plus, as well as kids aged 2 to 13. So if you were having a nosebleed, you simply get a package, open it, remove the device, and then you first want to lean forward and clear your nose of any clots. You then spread apart these pinch pads, rotate this clip upwards, insert the nasal sponges, rotate it into place, and pinch shut. And just like that, you have firm, constant, but comfortable, uninterrupted pressure in the right anatomic location. You can see my mouth is clear, my eyes are clear, it's very compact. You can put a mask over it if you need. So now I can sit back, I leave it in place for about 10 to 20 minutes, and then I simply release the clip and check for bleeding. If you're still oozing, you actually can rinse off these sponges and reinsert 2 to 3 times until your bleeding has stopped. So we consider this to be the Band-Aid of nosebleeds, helpful in any situation, can be applied by anyone, no matter their background. And I'm really excited to have my fellow emergency physicians use this in ERs, for our EMS people to have it for their first responder issues. And of course, like the everyday parent, mom and dad, or older person, no matter who you are, NasaClip can be your nosebleed rescue solution.
Enjoying this episode and want more Twist of Fate? Let's do this thing.
I am fierce. I am powerful.
No, we're gonna do it, and then we're gonna do it, and we're gonna make our own brokerage with it.
I think your strategy was different.
It's not just me, it's a team.
No, we're gonna work with you and we're gonna walk with you.
Check out over 40 episodes with new ones on the way. Find your inspiration with Twist of Fate. Available to stream on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Other people in the medical profession could use NasaClip to stop a nosebleed?
Well, the intended user is the nosebleeder. So you're talking about the actual person having a nosebleed. And this is an OTC over-the-counter device. So it is helpful to me as a physician in the ER or urgent care. Certainly it can be applied by a nurse, a tech. You don't need any medical background to use this. But ultimately, I actually designed it to avoid the ER visit. So it's something that would be in your home like a Band-Aid. So if you were having a nosebleed, you could easily reach for your NasaClip and stop your nosebleed no matter where you are. So it has utility, not just for medical professionals, but, school nurses, trainers, coaches. We have had interest for cruise lines, right? If you think about who gets on cruises, it's older people and little kids, and they got to deal with their problems on the cruise ship. Airlines, right? Another place where there's a lot of dry air and people might have a nosebleed emergency. And I mean, that's a very awkward place to have a nosebleed. And, I don't think flight attendants necessarily know what to do. So it's really what we consider.
It's very common on flights.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a ubiquitous medical issue, and we look at NasaClip as that ubiquitous medical solution that will empower anyone, anywhere to stop nosebleeds quickly. And I, see it as what will be a global brand name for nosebleed rescue.
I love the fact that you've gone over the counter with it. Now, I know that there is a potential future opportunity to even add some coagulants or something else that could assist with the nosebleed. And are you planning an NSF grant for that, or what's the process for that?
So I mentioned, I got my NSF SBR Phase 1 grant that was awarded in 2022. And so now we're applying for our Phase 2 grant, which is $1 million award. These would be non-dilutive funds that we could direct towards research and design of looking at NasaClip as a drug delivery platform. So that's the next step, both for potential medications that stop nosebleeds, but also for a whole host of intranasal medications that we use, like naloxone or Narcan, the opioid reversal agent, or seizure medicine, benzodiazepines. There's a lot of circumstances, both inside and outside the hospital, where you can give rescue meds in the nose, and it's the most effective way to deliver those medications. And we think that NasaClip will actually increase the efficacy and efficiency of giving meds in that way.
If we wanted to buy our own NasaClip, since it's over the counter, we can.
Yes.
So what's the process to get access to these devices?
Anyone can go to NasaClip.com right now, NasaClip.com, and buy NasaClip. We sell it through distributors sometimes if we want to get in the hospital system. So we always encourage them to buy it from us directly, since we are an MBE, a minority certified business. And I think that we've targeted audiences both in what we consider our B2B market. So that's, hospitals, urgent cares, EMS, as well as school nurses and sports medicines or trainers that would benefit from, using the device on their patrons or patients, and then the everyday person who might be having common recurrent nosebleeds that want to have it at home. And so I encourage everyone to check us out at NasaClip.com. We will be launching on Amazon later this year.
It will be on Amazon.
It will be on Amazon. And so, you can go to our e-commerce site right now, but we're working on getting on Amazon, which I think is, a necessary step to grow, obviously, in the retail market. For sure. I admit, even for me as a busy mom, if I went to buy NasaClip, I'd probably go to Amazon and look for it, which is why we're diligently
that's
working.
Where we buy Band-Aids.
Yeah.
Home remedies, home solutions.
But we eventually are working towards being, everywhere. So in retail, stores, pharmacies, online, and, make it easy for people to buy NasaClip, because it is a rescue device. So it's one of those things where, it's uncommon for someone to have a nosebleed and try to go somewhere and buy it. You want to have it on hand ahead of, any incident. So if you're prone to nosebleed, or your kid is prone to nosebleeds, you want to have it in the house ready to pull out so that you can tackle tackle that nosebleed immediately and hopefully avoid having to do something like go to the emergency department and see me, which is where that whole idea was born from, which is, I knew that we discharged over 90% of our nosebleeds, which tells me that this is often a problem that didn't need to come to the ER to begin with. And so I created the NasaClip solution so that you had the doctor's solution to nosebleeds, but accessibly like in your pocket wherever you were.
Love it. Love it. I really have enjoyed this conversation and learning a lot more about nosebleeds. It's something that I have children. They are prone to accidents and collisions, like you mentioned. And that is one of the concerns I have is like, can I have the right tool for the right problem? And I do believe NasaClip is the right tool for nosebleeds. So with that, I want to move into my final thoughts. If all of you aspiring entrepreneurs or founders took the lessons that Liz told us today about using your community, building camaraderie with other founders, following a process for development of building the right tool for the right problem, you would have a much higher degree of success in your business venture. And not only that, confidence. That's one thing that I'm seeing here. This is a physician that has converted into a very successful entrepreneur. And look, should be commended. Liz, if any of my audience wants to get in contact with you, either to buy NasaClip, you just explain how they do that, but maybe some of them want to join your social network. Maybe there's other founders. How would they get in contact with you?
Well, I would encourage everyone to follow us on all social media, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. My handle is Dr Eliz PC, so DRELIZ PC, and NasaClip, of course, at NasaClip. And then email me. I throw my email out there all the time because it is important for me to bring people along for, the journey that I've been on. I've had several people lend me a hand and pull me up, and I think that that's especially important for, the demographic that I come from. And part of why I'm doing everything with NasaClip is not just because I think it's a simple but elegant solution to nosebleed rescue, but I want this to serve as an inspirational story that lets people know that they can accomplish anything when they have an entrepreneurial dream that they pursue with fervor and passion, but also to instill the idea to our funders that investing in a founder like me is not charity. I'm here to make a turn on your money, and I will if you give me a chance. And that's why I want people to kind of engage with me. So you can email me at eclayborne, CLAYBORNE at nasaclip.com.
If you like this content, share, like, subscribe. We're trying to get these entrepreneurial stories out to you so that you can make your entrepreneurial dream come true. You can become a guest of Twist of Fate. You can advertise on Twist of Fate. This is a high growth platform to helping us make the world a better place. With that, I'll see you on the next Twist of Fate.
Twist of Fate is hosted by Doug Younger. It's produced by John Lenbed and Matthew Brown at Ezo Creative. Special thanks to all of our Patreon members, and if you want to be a part of our growing community, join our Patreon and gain access to bonus content, Twist of Fate merch, and more. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening.